Sergeant Marcus Thompson's day began before sunrise, the soft hum of his patrol car idling in Precinct 4's parking lot. He reviewed the overnight logs, nothing unusual, routine calls for welfare checks and noise complaints. By 6 a.m., he'd completed his equipment check and joined roll call, where Captain Harding nodded curtly and assigned him to a busy morning shift. Marcus felt the familiar pride of wearing the badge he'd earned after 20 years of unwavering service. His confidence shattered at 10 a.m. when Harding summoned him to internal affairs without explanation. The sterile interrogation room's fluorescent glare exposed a thick file on the table. Harding slid it toward Marcus, expression unreadable. "You're under investigation for accepting bribes," he said flatly. Marcus's heart thundered as he opened the dossier. Security camera stills showing a hand slipping an envelope over an evidence locker counter at 3:42 p.m. last Tuesday, exactly when his dashboard camera and partner's testimony placed him on a distant traffic stop. Next, he discovered records of large cash deposits into an offshore's account bearing his badge number, and anonymous witness statements claiming they saw him pocket thick stacks of bills. Each page contradicted everything he stood for. He stammered, "I was on a stop at 38th and Woodward at that time. You can check the dash cam." But Harding merely locked eyes and replied, "You'll have until the end of the day to respond, Thompson." Word spread through the precinct in whispers and stares. By afternoon, his department email was disabled, his patrol car reassigned, and a formal suspension notice was taped to his locker. Suspended without pay, pending IA investigation. Colleagues who once greeted him with respect now crossed the room to avoid his glance, their silence accusing him more brutally than any interrogation. That evening, Marcus retreated to his kitchen, strewn with printouts of dash cam footage, dispatch logs, and bank statements. Each document was a lifeline proving his innocence, yet the gulf between evidence and accusation yawned wider. His phone buzzed. A text from his partner, Lee Harper. "I know it's framed. Meet me at 0700. We'll fix this," offered the first spark of hope. As midnight oil burned, Marcus pieced together the fragments of a conspiracy. Someone had planted false evidence, manipulated records, and exploited the department's trust in its own leadership. In the hollow quiet of his home, surrounded by proof of his innocence, Marcus Thompson swore a vow. He would not only clear his name, but expose the corruption festering behind the badge. The fight for justice had begun, and it would cost him everything. Before dawn, Marcus slipped into the precinct parking lot and met Patrolman Lee Harper beside an unmarked cruiser. Lee's face was grim beneath the halo of the street lamp. "I pulled your dash cam footage and the partner logs," he whispered, handing Marcus a sealed manila envelope. Inside lay time-stamped video stills showing Marcus on a traffic stop at 3:40 p.m., precisely when the bribe was alleged to have occurred at the evidence locker miles away. Armed with this alibi, Marcus knew he needed proof of the frame itself. Over the next 2 days, he traced the chain of custody for the locker's surveillance drive, discovering that the master DVR had been accessed and overwritten at 3:42 p.m. nightly for 2 weeks. Lee cross-referenced the precinct's badge swipe logs and found Captain Harding's credentials used to enter the IA vault at exactly those times. That evening, after the station went dark, Marcus and Lee slipped past the idling engine of the vault's climate control unit. Wearing dark coveralls and latex gloves, they disabled the motion sensor with electrician's tape and popped the lock with a shim. Inside, Marcus located the DVR drive, carefully replaced it with a blank cartridge, and stashed the original in an anti-static bag. Every breath he took tasted of adrenaline and betrayal. They raced to the basement lab of Detective Rosa Solano, who specialized in digital forensics. Under her harsh lamp, Rosa imaged the drive and revealed a precise 15-second gap at 3:42 p.m. stamped to the DVR's system clock and matched to Harding's own login credentials. Rosa also discovered that the suspect bribe account had been created on precinct hardware 2 days before Marcus's mysterious suspension. Its ledger entries backdated to frame him for $5 million in phantom cash. With the evidence drive cloned and the forensic report in hand, Marcus felt the first swell of vindication. But as he prepared to strike back, Harding's text flashed on Marcus's phone. IA is watching. Be careful. Marcus knew the corruption ran deeper than he'd feared. Yet armed with hard data, surveillance gaps, electronic trails, and witness affidavits, he resolved to expose every hidden conduit of deceit at the precinct's core. The net was closing around Harding's lie, and Marcus Thompson would not stop until justice was served. The following morning, Marcus Thompson strode into Captain Harding's office with measured resolve, the sealed anti-static bag containing the original DVR drive and Rosa Solano's forensic report clutched in one hand, and Lee Harper's dispatch logs in the other. The early sunlight slanted across the cluttered desk as Harding looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before he masked it with a curt nod. Captain, Marcus began, laying the drive and report before him. This drive shows a deliberate 15-second erasure at 3:42 p.m. each night, under your credentials. He tapped the dossier showing the DVR timestamps, the system log entries, and cell tower pings, placing Harding's phone at Precinct 4 during the wipe. My partner's radio logs placed me on a traffic stop downtown at that moment. I demand an immediate, transparent reinvestigation. Outside this chain of command. Harding's face went ashen. He sat up straight, fingers drumming the desktop. Thompson, you're accusing me of tampering with evidence? His voice was low, but edged with menace. Yes, Marcus replied, voice unwavering. And I have the proof. Either you clear my name, or I'll take this to the county DA's silence, crackled in the office. Lieutenant Davis, seated in the corner, shifted uncomfortably. Detective Reynolds, arms folded, stared at the floor. Harding met Marcus's gaze for a tense moment, then exhaled. If you proceed, you'll implicate the entire command staff. Are you prepared for the fallout? I am, Marcus said. My integrity and the community's trust depend on it. Harding closed his eyes, a flicker of defeat crossing his features. Fine. I'll notify the county IA, but if your evidence crumbles under formal review, you'll be the one facing obstruction charges. Word of the confrontation spread through the ranks like wildfire. In the bullpen, officers whispered with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. Some cast Marcus wary glances, fearing retribution. Others offered subdued nods of encouragement, their confidence in their own leadership shaken. By afternoon, 2 plainclothes county investigators arrived at the precinct's front door, badges gleaming in the sunlight. Harding assembled the command staff in his trailer to deliver the news. I've asked for a special inquiry, he announced, voice hollow. Marcus handed over the DVR drive and forensic report to the county agents, who logged it into evidence and promised a full, independent audit. As the investigators loaded boxes from Harding's office, financial ledgers, locker logs, server backups, Marcus watched from across the parking lot, flanked by Lee Harper and Rosa Solano. Each piece of seized material felt like another brick removed from a rotten wall. And with every hammered box, he sensed the precinct's corruption crumbling, inch by inch. That evening, as Marcus stepped back into the station, the atmosphere had shifted palpably. The bay doors closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the empty bay. He knew the battle was far from over, but in pressing the confrontation within the ranks, he had pierced the precinct's veneer of control. The path ahead would be arduous, but backed by hard evidence and unwavering allies. Marcus Thompson felt more certain than ever that justice would prevail. By Friday afternoon, Marcus knew an internal IA review would be stifled by precinct politics. He needed a forum that would force accountability. Under the cover of a routine evidence review meeting, he slipped a USB drive containing Rosa Solano's forensic report and Lee Harper's dispatch logs into the pocket of his uniform. That evening, he met Lee and Rosa in a reserved conference room at civil rights attorney Jamal Wright's downtown office. Over half-drunk coffee and flickering fluorescent lights, they mapped out the next move, a public press conference to present the irrefutable evidence, DVR timestamps, server logs, cell tower pings, all pointing to Captain Harding's midnight erasures and the fabricated $5 million bribe account forged on precinct hardware. At 8 a.m. Monday, local TV crews and print reporters swarmed the small rented hall on Elm Street. Jamal Wright opened the conference, his voice resonant. Our community deserves leaders who uphold the law, not those who manipulate it for personal gain. He unveiled the DVR drive's 15-second gap, erased under Harding's credentials, and displayed cell tower maps, tying Harding's phone to the precinct at the exact scrub times. Next, Detective Solano described her forensic process, highlighting the systematic nature of the wipe. Marcus then took the podium, uniform crisp, badge gleaming. I have lived by this badge for 20 years, Marcus said, voice steady, though his heart pounded. I was framed by the very people sworn to protect our trust. Today, I call on the Wayne County District Attorney to appoint a special prosecutor to examine unedited footage, server logs, and financial records, and to restore integrity to Precinct 4. His words landed like a hammer blow. Cameras clicked, reporters scribbled feverishly, and a dozen community activists, faith leaders, neighborhood watch captains, union representatives stood behind him in silent solidarity. Handwritten signs reading, "Trust but verify" and "Protect our protectors" dotted the back wall. Multilingual leaflets explaining Marcus's call for a special inquiry circulated among a growing crowd of concerned citizens. By noon, the story had broken across every local news broadcast and front-page headline. Sergeant unmasks $5 million scheme. DA launches special inquiry. Calls poured into the DA's office demanding transparency. Civic groups organized rallies in front of the precinct. Even precinct veterans who once whispered doubts now approached Marcus with handshakes and apologies. Within 24 hours, the DA publicly announced a special prosecutor, the immediate suspension of Harding and his co-conspirators, and the activation of an independent audit of Precinct 4's evidence room and financial ledgers. As twilight fell, Marcus returned to the station to find the once stolid corridors transformed. Bulletin boards now displayed notices of community police forums, civilian oversight meetings, and beers and briefings socials. Officers stopped him in the hallway to thank him for his courage. Neighbors peered through the bay doors, offering waves of encouragement. In that charged evening energy, Marcus realized the fight had expanded beyond clearing his name. It had ignited a movement to rebuild public trust, ensure systemic transparency, and reaffirm that no badge, however tarnished, could go unchecked when the public demanded justice. When the Wayne County DA's grand jury returned indictments against Captain Harding, Lieutenant Davis, and Detective Reynolds, Precinct 4 braced for its most public reckoning. On a gray Tuesday morning, Marcus Thompson took his place in Courtroom 7C, the hushed crowd pressing into the gallery, reporters with notepads, community activists in crisp suits, and uniformed officers sitting tensely in the back row. Across the aisle, Harding's defense team of high-priced lawyers arranged their exhibits with cool efficiency. The prosecutor opened with a step-by-step replay of the corruption scheme, how Harding had orchestrated the secret creation of the phantom bribe account on precinct servers, how he and Reynolds erased 15 seconds of evidence room footage each night to conceal the theft, and how they diverted over $5 million in seized cash into untraceable holdings. Charts projected on the wall showed the account's sudden fund flows and reconciliations that didn't match the evidence room logs. When it was Marcus's turn, he rose steadily and delivered his impact statement. Heart pounding but voice unwavering, he recounted how the framed charges had shattered his career and betrayed community trust. He pointed to his own dispatch logs, dashcam stills, and Rosa Solano's expert testimony, each exhibit eliciting nods from the jury and gasps from the defense bar. As he described crawling through the evidence vault at night, replacing the doctored DVR drive with the original, the courtroom leaned in, drawn to the raw courage that had upended decades of cover-ups. Under cross-examination, Harding's counsel tried to paint Marcus as a rogue vigilante, an officer who broke into secured areas. But when the prosecutor replayed Harding's own badge swipe logs, time-stamped to the erasure times, the defense's narrative unraveled. Witness after witness, watch commanders, IT specialists, the precinct's bookkeeper, testified to Harding's sole access to the IA vault. By the time the final witness, Lee Harper, took the stand to confirm Harding's threats to silence him, the jury's skeptical glances at Marcus had shifted to scowls of disbelief at the former captain. After 2 days of searing testimony, the judge recessed to consider. Outside, a restless crowd gathered beneath towering columns, cell phones poised. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, relief and vindication swept through the courtroom. Harding's defense attorney closed his briefcase with a dull click, and as the jury filed past Marcus to deliver the verdict, the community erupted into subdued applause. In that charged moment, Marcus Thompson stood vindicated, not just as a wronged officer, but as the catalyst for a purged and reforged precinct. The Inquisition had stripped away corruption layer by layer, and now, at last, justice had its day in court. Marcus felt the weight of the badge shift from a symbol of accusation to one of accountability, proof that even the highest officers could be brought to answer for the truth. The morning after the indictments, Precinct 4 felt unrecognizable. The bay doors slid open, not to the usual clamor of engines and banter, but to an eerie quiet. Sergeant Marcus Thompson arrived at first light to find the front office sealed with evidence tape and stacks of cardboard boxes labeled "Do Not Open Special Prosecutor" lining the hallway. Plainclothes agents in dark suits and sunglasses moved methodically through Harding's former office, hauling away files, computers, and locked vault drawers. Inside the bullpen, Acting Commander Elena Cruz had already convened a meeting. Around a long metal table, precinct staff, uniformed officers, dispatchers, and civilian clerks sat in stunned silence as Cruz laid out the day's agenda. Captain Harding, Lieutenant Davis, and Detective Reynolds are on administrative leave pending trial, she announced, her voice firm but compassionate. Our priority now is restoring trust, both inside these walls and in the community we serve. First on the docket was an immediate audit of all evidence room transactions. Marcus and Lee Harper led teams of civilian auditors through each logbook. Evidence intake slips, chain of custody forms, and bank deposit records. Under Marcus's watchful eye, discrepancies once hidden by Harding's midnight erasures were reconciled, and a handful of suspect entries flagged for further investigation. Every box opened was another step toward cleansing the precinct's tainted legacy. Next, Commander Cruz introduced a new evidence integrity protocol. Dual signatures required for vault access, tamper evidence seals on every container, and a live video feed streaming to an off-site archivist's terminal. Maya Davis, the department's training officer, demonstrated the updated procedures in the evidence room, guiding colleagues through the dual key system that required simultaneous badge swipes from 2 officers. The precision of the protocol was a stark contrast to the secrecy that had enabled Harding's scheme. By midweek, precinct leadership had instituted quarterly integrity audits, commissioning an independent civilian review board composed of community leaders, legal experts, and former judges, including Judge Evelyn Carter, whom Marcus and Cruz invited to tour the station and review procedures firsthand. Their preliminary report praised the precinct's transparency initiatives, but recommended expanded public outreach to heal fractured community relations. That Thursday evening, the precinct held its first open house and Q&A for neighborhood residents. Under string lights strung across the apparatus bay, officers set up information tables on body camera usage, civilian complaint processes, and crime stats dashboards. Families milled through, children gripped free badges, and community organizers from the local NAACP chapter applauded the precinct's willingness to engage directly. Marcus stood at one table, answering questions about whistleblower protections and handing out flyers for the new hotline staffed by an independent nonprofit. Meanwhile, Commander Cruz sat in her office drafting the final piece of the precinct's renewal plan, the establishment of a civilian oversight board with subpoena power. She consulted with Marcus and legal advisors to define the board's scope, reviewing use of force incidents, auditing disciplinary actions, and convening public hearings. Word of the board's formation spread quickly through local media, earning praise from advocacy groups and wary nods from veteran officers. By month's end, Precinct 4's roster had shifted dramatically. Several holdover officers implicated in Harding's network opted for early retirement or were dismissed for misconduct. Their positions were filled by new recruits selected under a revamped vetting process, emphasizing integrity, community service, and commitment to transparency. The station's cultural composition broadened, with fresh faces reflecting the diversity of the neighborhoods they patrolled. On the final evening of his rotation, Marcus stood alone in the empty apparatus bay, the diesel tang of the trucks mingling with the crisp air. He gazed at the evidence room doors, fitted with their new dual lock system, and at the bulletin board, now adorned with community thank you notes. The precinct he once defended in the shadows of corruption had been reborn in the open light of accountability. As he secured his locker and swapped his badge for civilian clothes, Marcus understood that the true purge was not of individuals alone, but of a culture of secrecy. By dismantling the corrupt command and building processes of transparency, Precinct 4 had planted the seeds of lasting trust, proof that even the darkest betrayals could give way to a brighter future when one courageous officer dared to demand justice. 6 months after the indictments shook Precinct 4 to its core, Marcus Thompson stood in full-dress uniform, crisp navy trousers and freshly pressed tunic, on the polished marble steps of County Hall. Reporters jostled for position behind velvet ropes, cameras clicking, microphones extended. Behind him, a banner proclaimed, "Ceremony, New Precinct 4 Commander," in bold letters. Inside the Grand Rotunda, Marcus joined Sheriff Delgado and Acting Commander Elena Cruz under a vaulted ceiling of stained glass. The sheriff's voice boomed, "By the authority vested in me, I appoint Sergeant Marcus Thompson as the new commander of Precinct 4. He affixed the Silver Eagle insignia to Marcus's collar, his hand steady, but his eyes damp. Marcus felt the weight of the rank and the journey it symbolized settle on his shoulders like a mantle of responsibility. The ceremony drew to a close, with applause reverberating through the hall. Community leaders, faith ministers, neighborhood watch captains, and civil rights advocates lined up to congratulate him. A young mother whose daughter had been helped by Marcus during the corruption scandal pressed a handwritten card into his palm. "Thank you for believing in justice," she whispered. Back at Precinct 4 that afternoon, the real work began. Marcus entered the bullpen, once a place of whispers and suspicion, now bright with sunlight streaming through new windows, and found his officers gathered at ease. He unclipped his formal salute and addressed them. Today isn't about one man's rise. It's about a precinct's promise to serve with integrity, transparency, and unwavering respect for our community. We've rebuilt the foundation. Now we build the future. He unveiled 3 cornerstone initiatives: community command walks, monthly patrols where officers, led by Marcus, walk neighborhood streets on foot, meeting residents, listening to concerns, and forging personal connections beyond patrol cars. Chief's Advisory Circle, a rotating council of 12 civilians, youth, seniors, local business owners, activists, who convene quarterly with Marcus to review precinct performance metrics, propose improvements, and foster mutual accountability. Legacy Scholarships, a fund established in his honor to support children of fallen or retired precinct officers in pursuing higher education, reflecting Marcus's belief in supporting families behind the badge. That evening, the precinct hosted its first Commander's Block party in the adjacent community lot. String lights crisscrossed between engine bays, and folding tables groaned under homemade dishes from every cultural corner: soul food, Latin pastries, Vietnamese spring rolls. A local DJ spun tunes while officers manned face-painting booths and handed out free bike safety gear. Children darted between fire trucks and dunk tanks, manned by senior sergeants, laughter echoing like a healing balm over the asphalt. As dusk deepened, Marcus stood near the portable stage, watching uniformed officers share smiles and high fives with neighbors. Elena Cruz tapped his shoulder and nodded toward the crowd. "Look at what you've built," she said softly. Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. A precinct once marred by betrayal was now a beacon of partnership and trust. Late that night, when the lanterns dimmed and the last burger crumb was swept away, Marcus walked the empty bay alone. He paused before the plaque reading, "Integrity restored, and the array of community-forged artifacts now lining the wall. Signed photos of block party smiles, thank you notes, and blue ribbon commendations for transparency. He placed his palm gently on the cool metal and whispered a vow to the precinct's future. I will lead this command with the same courage that lifted me from suspicion to service. Every decision, every patrol, will honor the trust placed in this badge. Precinct 4 will never again hide in shadows. We will stand proudly in the light of accountability. And with that oath echoing in the silent station, Commander Marcus Thompson stepped into the next chapter of his legacy. One defined not by the scars of corruption he endured, but by the lasting reform and faith he inspired in the hearts of those he swore to protect.